Hello, I'm Billy Compton, Executive Director for the Cooperative Program and Resources of the Kentucky Baptist Convention. My privilege today to have in the studio to interview and to talk with you Ian Sterling from Las Vegas, Nevada. And Ian, we're glad to have you in Kentucky again. Welcome.
It's great to be back in my favorite state.
Yeah. Ian is with us in Kentucky again after 7 years of service as a disaster relief volunteer with the Kentucky Baptist team. And I understand you're here for recertification training?
Absolutely. I just attended recertification training in Mays Lick on Saturday and got myself set for 3 more years of disaster relief response, and very happy for that blessing.
Right. Ian is a local disaster relief volunteer and serves the Lord in that way, right?
Absolutely. Local from a long distance, but happy to be part of the Kentucky team. It's a blessing for me.
Yeah. Well, you traveled a long way to get recertified. I know you were telling me about that earlier. Remind me how many.
I think it's about 2,300 miles from Las Vegas to Mays Lick, and it was 2,300 miles that couldn't have been for a better reason, and I was blessed the whole way.
Yeah. Well, that's a long way to get recertified, but we're glad you're in Kentucky.
Well, I would recommend anybody that's in Kentucky that's thinking about recertification and feels like the distance is a bit too much, just take it to the Lord, say a prayer, remember I drove quite a way, and get recertified.
Right. And if you can do it.
Absolutely. Anybody can.
Anybody can.
And everybody should.
Well, remind us again, Ian, what was your life like before you came to Christ? Obviously, there's a motivation behind why you'd travel so far.
Sure.
And be a part of a disaster relief team from Kentucky.
Well, prior to being saved in Bay Minette, Alabama with the Kentucky team, it was a life that you could really describe as one of looking and longing, and almost in a way that I wasn't aware of at the time, and working with Kentucky Disaster Relief and being swept up in the spiritual power of what they were doing in Alabama, it just brought home emotionally and then spiritually within days later that looking and longing was a process that was really going on inside me to a greater extent than I even realized for many years, and it really brought it to my mind and to my heart, and that's how it happened in Alabama.
All right. Well, obviously, you've continued to volunteer and to serve and invest your abilities to relate to people and share how Christ has changed your life through disaster relief. What was it maybe that drew you to disaster relief training?
I think what drew me to disaster relief training was, well, I know what drove me to the training was the way that the Kentucky team worked together as a spiritual group that was clearly performing a ministry more than just a task. I had been associated with the Red Cross prior to that and still do Red Cross work, but that's a different context. There was no question that the disaster team from Kentucky was on a disaster ministry as opposed to a disaster response, and the difference between the two couldn't be more profound. And once you start to internalize that, you immediately understand what it can mean for your life and what it can mean to other people and how you can affect them.
Well, and you may unpack this a little bit more, but that's what I was going to ask you. What do you think is so unique and special about disaster relief volunteers as a whole? Obviously, your experience was with those in Kentucky,
sure.
But you know, obviously, there's a whole network of disaster relief volunteers. What is it that is special? Maybe you just described it right then.
No, I would take it one step further, and any type of disaster relief ministry based here in Kentucky or in any other state or anywhere in the world where you're doing disaster relief in a ministry context, the thing that makes it so special and so engaging spiritually is the fact that you're putting your faith into action. That connection between the actions that you're taking on behalf of others and the faith that you carry inside is something that takes your spiritual life to a whole nother level, because that action, thought, belief, faith connection is a very powerful reinforcement to a spiritual life that will make it broader and richer, and has really done so for me.
Mm-hmm. So your service and your investment in working with that team deepens your own relationship to Christ.
Oh, my relationship to it'll be 7 years this fall that I was saved in Bay Minette, Alabama, and to this day, a fundamental component to my life, the growing of my life in Christ, is the continued activities and association and team membership with Kentucky Disaster Relief, and how that continued ministry activity grows my faith, deepens my faith, and broadens my ability to reach out to others and to minister to them. It's critical.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of my privileges is to, having been aware of how Christ changed your life and your involvement in disaster relief with Kentucky, is to share with people that as Kentucky Baptists, we can do more together than we can do alone. And we call that funding infrastructure of our mission, ministry, and activities, the cooperative program. Can you tell me ways that the cooperative program has affected you personally?
Well, the cooperative program, there's a very direct connection, really, between the blessing of my saving in Alabama and what the cooperative program provides, and how it facilitates the process of ministry and reaches out to people like me and brings them to Christ, where of course they should be. I don't think the Kentucky team would have been in Bay Minette, Alabama without the backing and the funding and the support of the cooperative program. And because they were there on the ground, serving people in need, ministering to people in need, and coming in contact with people like myself, that connection is made, souls are saved, and that process continues to move forward. Now, once I'm saved, I can continue with the team and on my own in my life, growing in Christ, moving the process forward. So when the cooperative program supports and funds this kind of process, there's a multiplier effect that I would hope people would really appreciate, because it's critical to how much the cooperative program can do.
Yeah, you may start in Kentucky, go to Alabama, back to Las Vegas,
right,
and on, right?
And we could be in Tennessee next time, or we could be in Olive Hill, or we could be in Mississippi, where we were a few years later. It's something that multiplies spiritually, it multiplies geographically. So that cooperative program and the support it provides creates a tremendous network of opportunity to minister that I would hope that people would really understand and appreciate, because it's so important.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think you've touched on something that's going to be happening nationally with cooperative program, and that is that working to develop a theme that's called Together We Are There. And can you see how the cooperative program has allowed disaster relief people to be literally here and there and everywhere around the world in your connection with disaster relief?
Well, there's no question, because in my connection, just as a member of the Kentucky team for almost 7 years now, it's taken me to half a dozen states and half a dozen different disaster situations where the opportunity was there to reach out to people, to put your faith into action, to be right out there in the field where people are in need. And you multiply, that's just me and the Kentucky team, you multiply that by how many other deployments, how many other locations, how many other situations, even internationally. And you're talking about a reach of spiritual ministry that's so badly needed that extends across the country, and frankly, in certain circumstances, across the world.
Yeah, exactly. You know, really it's a implementation of Acts 1:8 that talks about us being a witness locally, regionally, and obviously in North America and globally around the world. And your witness gets to be multiplied that way.
And I think it's important for people that are associated with the cooperative program and disaster relief to understand that how local, regional, national, and international very much connect together, reinforce and support each other, and help it all to expand. Because it doesn't matter if it's Mississippi or Olive Hill or the Philippines or Samoa or Japan, that expansion is for Christ, and that's what this is all for.
One other question, Ian. What are you doing now? What is your life like now?
I'm anxiously awaiting that next deployment call from Coy and Larry. That's the thing that I think we all live for the team. In my own life, I'm continuing to grow in Christ, continuing to be active with Kentucky Disaster Relief, and always looking forward to the next deployment. And I work locally with my own church in my own area in Las Vegas and support the community there, and just continue that process of growing my life with the Lord and enjoying His blessings.
I'm Billy Compton, Executive Associate for the Cooperative Program of the Kentucky Baptist Convention. It's been my privilege to be speaking with Ian Sterling from Las Vegas, Nevada, and his ministry with the Kentucky Disaster Relief Team. If you'd like to know more about the ministries and missions that are supported by the Cooperative Program, feel free to contact our Kentucky Baptist Convention at kybaptist.org/cpmissions.